Hey everybody, it's Mexi. I'm here in Chiang Mai. This is my little residence for the next little while. I just wanted to basically welcome all of the new subs and just explain why I won't be posting very much until about August, I guess. I'm here for a conference and to do some follow-up fieldwork for my PhD. And long story short, I have grossly overestimated the amount of time that I would have to film and edit and put things out. So this video is going to be basically like podcast format, basically just me speaking without any real editing. I felt compelled to make this intro because Bad Mouse so graciously just shouted me out, and I was like, oh my god, like what terrible timing. I mean, there's never a terrible time to be shouted out, but terrible timing because I knew that I was going to be away and that my next video would basically just be a podcast style rant about Idpol on the left. So probably not the best first impression, but I just wanted you to know that it's basically because I have zero time here and, you know, I'm trying to enjoy my time here also and not sit around filming and editing and posting videos, but this is something that I have wanted to get off my chest for a while. I'm kind of responding a bit to some people in the movement specifically, actually, even though I don't name anybody. I had already pre-recorded the audio, so I figured I might as well get this out in the world. So if you care about the Idpol, anti-Idpol debates on the left, then stay tuned. I have a lot to say about it. Obviously, this is quite a long video. And otherwise, I'm returning to Canada on July 28th, and so after that I will return to my regular programming with filmed videos, edited, I mean, to the best of my ability. But yeah, basically bear with me on this one, and thank you again. It's so great to have everyone, and enjoy this rant. I really did not want to make this video at all, actually. But I've seen just a few too many comments completely misconstruing what I understand to be pretty basic concepts and like pretty basic like requirements for, you know, just basic human decency, that I feel like it's like the same way that I feel when like liberals or conservatives ask me like very basic questions like, oh, can you explain in layman's terms, you know, why the free market is bad? It's like, really? Like, honestly, guys, like, we're past this. Like, we're so far past this. And we don't have time for this. Like, we don't have time. So when I first found leftist YouTube and like the leftist online community, that's basically when I first heard the term brocialism, coming from obviously an academic background. Like, that's just not a thing. This is like the first time that I've heard people talking about Idpol and intersectionality in this very, very broad and generalized way. People actually had like misconceptions about intersectionality that I've seen that really misconstrued. This is not completely surprising to me, as I really doubt that many of the anti-Idpol leftists or the reactionary, like, anti-sjw crew, I doubt that any of them have really read much feminist theory, let alone intersectional feminist theory. But it's been a bit disappointing to hear people take a lot of the same stances against Idpol as the reactionaries. I'm going to start by saying, if you hate bourgeois feminism, I am with you. Like, if your idea of successful feminism is just more high-powered female CEOs, then I'm not your girl, right? I'm just so not about that at all. Like, the Hillary thing in my mind actually did a lot for intersectionality, because although, of course, you know, there were some people that were thinking that voting for her would be a feminist act, I actually saw the opposite. I saw the reaction to that being very intense. Like, from everyone in my networks, I just saw a ton of pushback. And then, coming out of that at subsequent women's marches or in, spaces like feminist spaces, there was a much bigger emphasis on intersectionality, on class, on race, on liberation along all of those lines. And we have to remember that there are so many different, like Idpol means so many different things. Idpol doesn't just mean one thing, right? So I hear a lot of people just assuming that Idpol equals some like blue-haired freak on the street corner screaming "fuck cis white men" and just having a meltdown or something like that, and that's considered Idpol. Like, no, that's just a crazy person screaming. I mean, I don't want to say it's just a crazy person screaming, because obviously all of these things are context specific, but I definitely have seen some people who probably have not read feminist or intersectional theory either, really doing a disservice to the movement, just being like crazies. But like, okay, where have we seen that? Everywhere in the world, you know what I mean? Like, how many crazed idiots do we have to denounce, in like Antifa or something? But does that mean that anti-fascism is not a movement that we should be supporting? Does it actually invalidate the underlying importance of what that movement is about? Like, no, it doesn't, right? So by saying or just calling it Idpol in the complete abstract, like, what does that mean? It lumps together all of these random fools who are, going on Tumblr and posting dumb shit, which, by the way, like, how many people have actually encountered anybody like that in their actual real life? Like, the reason that we have that impression is that these videos, like, people like that have been caught on tape, and they are obviously handpicked and highlighted by the reactionaries, showing this is what leftism is about, this is what identity politics is. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Like, that's not actual politics. That's just someone getting pissed and trying to put someone else down, right? Or like someone getting offended. Like, that's not actual politics. Like, politics is mobilization. Politics is, coming together to voice your concerns, to demand recognition in an open, political sphere. So like, calling that Idpol, it lumps all of that shit in with people with actual important struggles and people who are actually facing discrimination that we should be allies with, especially as socialists wanting to build a movement and, as socialists who are actually supposed to care about people and their oppressions and their struggles. So it lumps all these crazies in with trans people who want spaces free of violence and attacks based on their gender expression. It lumps them in with, the struggles of First Nations. So when we say fuck Idpol, like, you fucking liberal trash, it's like, who exactly are we saying fuck you to? Because identity politics, like, that encompasses all of those things. So by saying fuck you, like, it's just completely indiscriminate. So first of all, like, not all struggles are revolutionary. So if Ontario banned abortions tomorrow, I would be out on the fucking front lines. You better believe I would be raging. They would probably catch a few videos of me screaming some annoying shit and then post it on the internet like, look, this is what Idpol is, But you know what? Like, that's so important. It's so fucking important. And I would expect my male comrades to have my back on that. I would expect to see them standing beside me on the front lines of protest, having my back for that. Because, like, you know what? If you want me to be your comrade, then you better be ready to fucking be mine. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to sound like I'm only doing this if you're going to help me. Like, no. But if our whole goal is like moving beyond oppression, moving beyond discrimination, then if I have a legitimate concern, I mean, maybe you can make the case that this is related to the economic, but you know what? Until we have the revolution, I still want control over my own fucking body. So, if I have a concern like that is really legitimate, then you cannot just don't lump me in with all these crazy liberal bourgeois feminists, you know what I mean? It's like, but this is really a concern that needs allyship. And yeah, if it's about building a movement, then why don't you want to tap in to groups of people who actually have concerns, and they are organized and they are expressing them. Like, talk about educate, agitate, and organize. Like, these people are already agitated and they're already organized. Some things will be directly related to the economic or to class warfare, but in terms of like having empathy for other people, not that many people have access to radical education or radical theory. Like, how many people do you know, honestly, in real life that have had access to that or have been exposed to that? Like, I know a lot more people who have been exposed to neoclassical economics than I do. Well, I mean, that's not true because I'm like, all of my colleagues obviously know what I'm talking about, but you know, you get what I'm saying, right? So it shouldn't be shocking to us living under this really prevalent capitalist hegemony. It shouldn't be shocking to us that people with these grievances who are organizing might not fully be aware of the broader political and economic circumstances that are shaping their struggle. So, you know, they're already agitated, they're already organized. Like, let's bring some education over there instead of just being like, oh, this is just fucking liberal bullshit. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like, how unproductive is that? Like, what? Is that really going to be our standpoint? It's just like, oh, fuck, you guys do your own thing. You're idiots. You don't see what the real problem is. It just sounds really like fucking tone deaf coming from a lot of like young white dudes. People are getting so offended, like, oh, like people don't want to hear the opinions of like white men. It's like, that's not true. Like, mostly everybody that I watch on YouTube is a young white dude. And so it's like, I'm very interested in your opinions, but it just sounds a little bit tone deaf coming from people who obviously have not experienced a lot of these different struggles, just kind of saying like, oh, we don't have to worry about it. Socialism will just fix everything, right? And if we want people who are experiencing legitimate struggles and racism and sexism to understand like the bigger picture and to be on our side, then I just don't see that as being a good way to go about it at all. Particularly because we're not going to know the concerns or the struggles of people until they organize and bring those to our attention. Like, for an example, so myself as a white cis female, when I want to go to the washroom, I go to the washroom. I walk in there, I do my thing, I walk out, nobody looks at me funny, nobody threatens me with violence, nobody actually, you know, enacts violence upon me because I'm doing that. It's just a normal thing that I do. So me, coming from that standpoint, having this personal gaze and this personal experience, I am probably not going to, like, unless somebody tells me that they're having a problem, I'm not going to assume that there are other people that are having, like, really big problems in there. You know what I mean? Because I don't have that experience. It's not something that would immediately jump into my mind because I've never experienced that. To me, that's a really foreign thought. It's a really foreign idea. So until, you know, trans people organized and brought that as a point of contention out into the public sphere, I didn't think about it. And, you know, it's not that I'm like a terrible person, or it's not like, oh, my opinion doesn't matter because I'm a cis white woman. It's that I just would never have thought of that because I don't experience it. So, like, think about that. Like, there are so many things that we just do not know about, that we cannot know about, and that we will not know about until people who are experiencing that struggle, often people who share the same identity, until they organize and demand recognition for that concern. And that is essentially what the right to narrate is. I've seen some people just really, really misconstrue the right to narrate and just take it as like a personal attack of like, oh, yeah, if I'm a white male, a cis white male, I don't have an opinion. It's like, are you serious? Like, this is the point that I mean, like we're so far past this, guys. Like, we're past this. Like, that's the reactionary standpoint, thinking that that's what that means. That's not what that means. It's just a very, very obvious thing that, like, you know, capitalists should not be the only speakers for the interests of the workers. Similarly,
cis white women should not be the only speakers talking about the issues of trans women, because I don't know what trans women are going through, to be honest, because I'm not going through it. So we need to listen to people who are going through the struggle, provide them with a platform, or, oftentimes we don't provide them with a platform, but they organize anyway and they demand that platform and they take that platform, which I commend, and I think we should all commend as socialists. And that's Idpol. That's what it is. So it's why are we not commending this? And yeah, it's very, very strange to me that so many leftists are misconstruing these ideas, like the right to narrate, which to me is such a basic and obvious thing. I'm sorry, do you want to narrate my concerns as a woman to me? Another example is veganism. People saying basically, fuck the vegan movement because the real problem is capitalism, and we can't make any conceivable gains for animals until capitalism is overthrown. I'm first of all, girl, if you're reading my videos as anything but anti-capitalist, I don't know what to tell you. Obviously people experiencing struggles should also be socialists. And obviously, yes, capitalism contributes one fucking hell of a lot to the problem and needs to be overthrown. But the idea that we don't have to think about shit or, examine what we are doing and make changes while capitalism is still running is just fucking bullshit. I call so much bullshit on that. What do you think? All of a sudden we're gonna overthrow capitalism, and then people who have been eating animals their whole life and wearing animal products and everything are just gonna stop doing that and think, oh, we're living under socialism now, I guess I should stop oppressing animals and killing them. And, no. Has that ever happened before? Or has anyone even tried to build that into their framework? So making statements like that, to me, kind of seems like it's just an excuse to not think about those things, to not re-examine your own complicity in those things, to not re-examine the way that you might benefit from those exclusions or oppressions. Just thinking we don't have to think about that, basically because I don't have to think about that because I'm not experiencing it. And that's when it becomes a little bit tone deaf, because it's if you're privileged enough to not have to think about these things on a daily basis, then awesome, but recognize that as a privilege, because not everyone has that same privilege. For some people, it is inescapable that they think about these things all day, every day of their waking life, Another example is people with disabilities. So recently I was at a conference. It was actually the Marx's Capital After 150 Years conference, which was really fucking awesome. But anyway, we were in the auditorium, and this was basically the least accessible auditorium that I've ever been in, but I did not even think about that, because I don't have to think about it. I walked in the door, I walked down the stairs, I took a seat. I didn't sit there thinking gosh, this auditorium seems incredibly inaccessible, because I had no problem in there, right? But this poor girl, she came in, she had to sit at the very, very back, because she couldn't get on the stairs, obviously. And so she was right by the door. She couldn't hear anything because people kept coming in and out, and there was this buzzer going off behind her head. It was actually awful. I felt so bad for her, and she kept putting up her hand and trying to say something, but people were just basically ignoring her because, I don't know, they couldn't do anything, right? So she ended up just leaving really, really upset and not being able to take in any of the panels that she wanted to see, right? And so, tell me that under socialism, they would have built that auditorium in the perfect way possible to accommodate all people with all possible disabilities without differently abled people actually organizing and bringing those concerns to light. You know what I mean? How would they have the foresight to do that if they don't listen to people who are organizing and experiencing something like that? Because if you're not experiencing it, you're not going to know about it. And again, that is the right to narrate. People with those disabilities should be narrating to us what their problems are. I shouldn't be narrating to her what her problems are when I don't fucking know about them. And from just like a basic human decency standpoint, people should not be discriminated against and made to feel less than and inferior and just awful in their own skin because of something like that that's related to their identity or related to something that they can't change. Like on the left, the word autistic is thrown around like it's just nothing. And I'm sure for actually autistic people, it's incredibly demeaning. But, you know, people would rather just get pissed and say Idpol is fucking liberal trash than just bother to pay attention to what they're saying and pay attention to whether they're hurting other people around them. And so my final point, or my final concern, is that if we are writing off all of these struggles, all of these people coming together, making these demands, if we're writing these all off as Idpol, how are we going to know what the main concerns are that we need to build into our methods for movement building and for, you know, socialist governance, post-capitalism? Like I've heard people say before that, oh, we don't need to worry, like, don't worry women, don't worry people of color, we don't need to worry about all this bigotry and all of this abuse and all of this violence, because socialism is just going to solve everything. And I've heard people say, like, I don't actually understand what this means, but that like the methods of attaining socialism will just automatically solve every other issue. And I don't understand quite what those methods are because they haven't really been clearly articulated to me. But I just call bullshit on all of that, basically. Like I call some serious bullshit on that. No one is disputing the fact that socialism, as, you know, changing the economic conditions of production, that will definitely help. And in fact, it is necessary. Michael Parenti gave a wonderful talk about this, and I'll link it below. And he uses the USSR and others as examples of how much it did help women in particular. Men were still wildly overrepresented in positions of authority. They were wildly overrepresented in management positions, and women still were charged with many of the, you know, household duties. And I mean, it's pretty much impossible to really get at to what extent like sexism, as in like bigoted sexism, to what extent that was actually, you know, remedied. And then, you know, obviously the LGBTQ community was, you know, that was not a space of liberation for them. That was not emancipatory. So, like, tell me again, like, what methods exactly are going to just solve the problem for everybody? The point here is that we have to be conscious and we have to be listening so that we can build these things into our framework so that they will solve all these problems for everybody. The reason why in so many socialist countries there was, you know, a lot of gains made for women is because actual people decided to put those things into policy. So these are things we have to think about. What are the policies and what are the steps we have to take to make sure that everyone will be liberated? It's not something that you can just like let happen, you know what I mean? You gotta fucking think about it, dude. You know, and I hate to play the offense card, and like I'm not actually really offended, you know? I mean, so many of my male comrades self-identify as brocialist, and you know, looking at the picture for the Leftists Twitter, it's like, okay, this is obviously not a space that was created with me in mind, you know, and that's fine, you know, it's totally fine. Like I'm not offended. I'm like, okay, whatever, fine. But when it comes down to it, like if you are unwilling to actually think about a lot of these things and be respectful to other people who are going through these things, and to actually, you know, want to plan and make that part of the framework for our socialist movement, then it's just not really a movement that I'm interested in. Like I will align myself with comrades who actually get it and who actually give a fuck and who actually want to be thoughtful about it. Okay, this has been like so fucking long. I'm so sorry. This is probably my longest video other than that one that I went on and on about the golden one. So I'm just gonna stop. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I'm sorry it was a long rant, and I'll see you in another video.